Hero Club presents Los Ingobernables de Tokusatsu.
Welcome to Los Ingobernables de Tokusatsu, episode 86. Yep, we're even getting closer now to episode 100. 14 episodes to go, technically, at this point now, or 13, whichever way you want to count.
Hopefully we don't get canceled at 99.
We're not going to get canceled at 99. There's
and then
no
our last
possibility.
episode has to air on the CW website.
Nevertheless, I'm your host and co-creator, Wheelchair21, and joining me is one of the Mike and Mikes. It is Soundout12, the fourth member of the podcast.
I'm the obnoxious one.
You kind of have become that, honestly. You kind of have. Subtly.
I do it on purpose, out of love.
I think sometimes you just do it and you don't realize you do it.
Oh, everything I do is intentional, for I am inevitable.
No, you're not. You're really not. Anyways, introducing the third person, it's Darkon.
So why are we reviewing Highlander meets Godzilla?
No, this isn't really Highlander meets Godzilla, or there would have been more one-on-one fights.
There was like 20 one-on-one fights. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, there were several group fights.
I made a Dragon Knight joke. This is the Kamen Rider Ryuki of Godzilla movies.
This is literally, more of the Ryuki at one point. But anyways, like we said last week, we would be following up with our review of Godzilla, King of the Monsters, or I should say on the last episode, since there was technically, I think, a week hiatus in developing these episodes due to Soundout going to see our friend Orlando's freaking graduation over here on the East Coast.
I got to see John Krasinski get a doctorate.
Yeah, he got a doctorate. Mr. Not Fantastic got a doctorate.
Ken Burns also got a doctorate, and I was the only person excited to see Ken Burns.
I know, that's the irony. Everyone was like, oh my god, it's not Mr. Fantastic. You're like, oh my god, it's Ken Burns.
But there is a iMovie preset effect named after Ken Burns. That doesn't just happen for anybody.
Yeah, so anyways, like we said on the last episode, we would be talking about Godzilla King of the Monsters, since it is now officially out in theaters, and is actually destroying the box office, even when there are people pissed that it's actually succeeding. Whether it's people who don't know what Godzilla is, or people who are just butthurt at what it became. Overall, as you know,
more kaiju fans. Good. Only us weirdos.
Yeah, I know, and had we had, the other Mike, we would have had the casual, the enthusiast, the hardcore, and the radical. The radical being Mucha, as you've seen in other episodes when we refer to Shin Godzilla.
Mucha would have been like, this was the worst movie of all time, but I loved it because it's a giant shitpost or something. I don't know.
No, he wouldn't have done that. He was actually happy about... No, Geo is a giant shitpost. That one was a deliberate shitpost. That one legitimately is. But this time around, having talked to him and planning out this episode, no, he actually enjoyed how it actually hit every nail on the head for a Godzilla film and adapted it to American Hollywood antics. But since he's not here to gloat about it like me and him did for like 3 hours Friday night before everyone got home to watch, originally Swamp Thing, then got told we were doing it on Saturday, let's talk about...
I went to see Godzilla because a friend was just like, we're going to see it. I'm like, what? Okay.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about this film. So, the best way to do it, and giving you the short version of the film for those who have yet to see it, and don't necessarily care about spoilers, is that the film opens up in 2014 during the Battle of San Francisco, where the Russell family is looking for their son Andrew, and lo and behold, they never frickin' find him, because he was one of the victims in the actual attack between Godzilla and the Mutos.
Basically, the Batman v Superman opening.
Yeah, but not done as badass with good music, unfortunately. I'll admit, Batman v Superman did have a better intro showing destruction, but nevertheless, let's fast forward to the Russells. Dr. Emma and Dr. Mark split up. Their daughter Madison now lives with Emma, and Mark is off being a wildlife photographer, just going around checking things out.
He knows animals. That makes him a huge authority on anything and everything.
Yes, he loves all the animals. All the animals. Whereas Emma is technically a paleobiologist working within Monarch to study the Titans. Currently, she is in China with her daughter, witnessing the birth of the kaiju known as Mothra. She has ironically discovered or been able to use her husband's work to create this device called the Orca. It's based on communicating with whales and dolphins, but she's enhanced it to work specifically for the Titans. It's an idea to make the Titans more docile and try to make it that the Earth can be eco-friendly to humanity and the kaiju. However, an eco-terrorist group led by a former British officer known as Alan Jonah attacks the base, kidnaps not just Emma but the daughter Madison, and they try to take Mothra out, but it escapes and goes to cocoon itself under a waterfall nearby. At this point, Serizawa and his, I guess you would say, assistant, Dr. Graham, while they're in Washington, get told, leave a huge military court case, tribunal, to then go and find Mark and then locate where, his wife was taken with, especially the orca. And they realize that Godzilla also senses something's up because he literally comes to Monarch's main HQ, has a face-off with them because they're both tracking the signals of the orca, which leads them all the way to Antarctica, where the wife is working actually with Jonah to release Monster Zero, the first kaiju they ever found, I guess. That's how they're trying to use the old surname of the Showa era term for Ghidorah as Monster Zero, as being the first one found there. So they release Ghidorah, and Godzilla and him battle it out. And interestingly enough, in this fight, Dr. Graham is killed, Serizawa and the team are in shock, and Ghidorah just gets away with Godzilla pursuing after him. However, they find out that Emma and Jonah are now working to free another kaiju, which is Rodan in Mexico. And they start realizing that she has this weird vendetta where she's gonna do a whole giant kind of G Gundam-esque ideology of, the world will be reformatted and shaped by the kaiju if we let them roam freely. And we're now the virus. Humanity is the virus. We're the scourge. And we gotta clean this up. It gets really G Gundam-esque with this whole mentality.
That she's actually Mistress Asia?
Yeah, she's literally she's Asia. She is literally Master Asia.
Actually, since she's from America, she's Mistress America.
Yeah, Mistress America. And she's just like, yeah, we're gonna do this. But here's the thing. Because they went and woke up Monster Zero first, he's also an alpha like Godzilla. And so he's coming to their location, because that's where the orca's binging and dinging to wake up Rodan. That he then arrives, has a brief struggle with Rodan, and then has another struggle with Godzilla, as you find out the American government has launched their new test device called the Oxygen Destroyer, hoping to kill not just Godzilla, but Monster Zero at the same time. However, they are successful in almost killing Godzilla, only damage Monster Zero by destroying his head, which he then regenerates the left one. And then Rodan becomes submissive to him, as Monster Zero is then more proven to be a true alpha by awakening and using his harmonic frequencies that I guess each of the Titans put out to actually not just lure them out of hiding, but take control of the majority of them as they begin doing a destroy all monsters-esque, attacking of major cities, attacking just society and laying waste to the earth. And at this point, we find out one of Serizawa's, I guess you would say, I wouldn't say intern, I guess you would say subordinates, loyal subordinates, Dr. Chen, discovers that Ghidorah has to be actually alien, finding all these ancient texts sent to her from other members of Monarch, as well as her twin sister, where, we start getting foreshadowing that the sisters and their mothers and their grandmothers and their aunts and uncles are all, destined from, genealogy of twins, as a reference to Mothra and the fairies, because they've all lived where Mothra was sort of found originally, and she's understanding that Ghidorah is not even from Earth. He's an apex predator from space. He must have some weird abilities, because he is an actual alien dragon, and crazy things are going on. They're now wondering, where is Godzilla? And Mothra just shows up out of its cocoon to be like, hey guys, I'm actually in a symbiotic relationship with Godzilla. I know where he is. He's underwater in this trench. Go there, you'll find him. It's great. But then they find out that this trench is actually more like a special protected channel that flows throughout the earth. It's special channels that allow Godzilla to actually just scoot from place to place unbeknownst. It's a weird cryptozoology kind of theory that there's just underground
Hollow
caverns.
Earth.
Yeah, the hollow earth. And he lives underground, and he's trying to just recuperate his strength by absorbing the radiation of the earth itself. And they realize it's going to be too slow. If Godzilla does this, it would take, I think, like Serizawa mentions, more than a decade to even a century just to have Godzilla be replenished. So Mark and Serizawa devised the idea of, let's take whatever nukes we have and just blow them up underground where Godzilla's sleeping. So they go and plan that out while Emma realizes the destruction of Ghidorah is coming to America. Her daughter Madison breaks out, steals the orca, heads to Fenway because they're nearby, and uses the stadium to actually lure Ghidorah in, hoping she can try to at least calm him or distract him long enough to stop the kaiju from temporarily attacking all the other places in the world and slowly, migrating to converge with Ghidorah to become a super monster army. So at that point, they blow the bombs, they save Godzilla, but Serizawa must detonate it himself to, bring him back. It's kind of an homage to Serizawa had to kill the creature in the original 54 film, whereas this Serizawa has to save the creature in the 2019 film, which is a cool 65th anniversary nod. Godzilla goes right to America to fight Ghidorah in Boston, And ironically, Mark convinces the rest of Monarch to get the American government to actually send in as many troops as possible to assist Godzilla in the battle with Ghidorah at Boston. On top of that, they realize that nuking Godzilla actually has supercharged him, where he's going thermonuclear. He's going to blow at any time, and they don't know what's actually going to occur. As
Destroyer is going to show up, and then he explodes.
Yeah, exactly. So the battle breaks out in Boston. Godzilla and Ghidorah duke it out, and as Ghidorah's taking up the upper hand, Mothra comes in. As Mothra is assisting Godzilla in reclaiming the battle, Rodan comes in. Now all four great titans are fighting with each other. Ironically enough, Mothra actually stuns Rodan and just incapacitates him, and then sacrifices herself to save Godzilla, similar to Rodan did in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, to revitalize Godzilla even further. As they realize Godzilla's even getting more supercharged, Mark and Emma are trying to locate their daughter who escaped from Fenway Park in time to, avoid all the destruction and chaos of the main battle. They rescue her, they get out of the city, and lo and behold, Godzilla goes nuclear and uses his thermonuclear pulse that he has in the Heisei era, and he starts eviscerating Ghidorah at pulse after pulse after pulse until he just goes off like an H-bomb and wipes out most of Boston. And then he just tries to relax a little while the rest of the Titans that were located in the Americas surround him. And Godzilla just starts looking around going, "You want a piece of me?" And then they're all like, "Nah, fam, you is the king." And Rodan becomes Zazu, bows to him. Your movie's practically over. And as the credits roll, you start finding out that everything that Dr. Emma theorized about the kaiju, the Titans, would happen. They start actually changing the landscape of Earth and yada yada yada, even though she didn't entirely make it out of the city alive, but, she sacrificed herself to give enough time. And on
technically
top of
she
that,
could have survived just slightly, if not for the burning. Once the burning happened, it was too late. It was way too late for that.
Once Godzilla went nuclear, it was a little too late. So anyways, we find out, like we said in the news, that one, all of her theories is working, like cities are being restored, or at least forests are being restored due to certain kaiju's abilities or attributes and connection with nature. On top of that, we know that there's another Mothra egg that was found. And we also find out that somehow, while Godzilla has his own monster army, other Titans have been converging directly to Skull Island to join with Kong, who is now the other dominant alpha in the world's ecosystem. And lo and behold, the decapitated Ghidorah head that was lost in Mexico was found by fishermen and then sold to Jonah, who buys it for some unknown means. So obviously this is going to be something that I'm guessing is going to culminate in Godzilla vs. Kong, or is there
Godzilla v. Kong, Dawn of Mecha Ghidorah.
Yeah, or they're kind of hoping for some ass-pull thing from Toho saying, okay, you get more movies after this. So I guess we're not going to know till maybe this San Diego Comic-Con or next San Diego Comic-Con at this point. So, I mean,
My mom made a joke that made too much sense.
Okay.
She said, so is Godzilla vs. Kong going to be them trying to fight for dominance, but eventually just teaming up to fight Mecha Ghidorah after Mothra convinces them to do so?
I mean, that could work, but I don't think they're going that way, since it literally states that one will fall in their fight for the poster. Like, they state that
and
one
technically Godzilla died in this one and came back. So really, technically, is that really that truthful?
Yeah, that's true. They could pull one of those where Kong may actually die and then out of nowhere come back later in the film. Who knows?
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But I definitely know that with Legendary in the state and where they are with the Godzilla films and how like Godzilla, Kong, Skull Island, and King of the Monsters have all had decreasing opening weekend numbers. And knowing about the Toho stuff, I'm imagining Godzilla vs. Kong is going to be kind of the wrap up to everything. And then if we get more movies, then it's going to be a new story arc.
Yeah, because, like, that's the thing that's very skeptical right here, like, before we go more into the films, is just, it's so indecisive and conclusive, where it's like, how are they going to wrap up all of this by Godzilla vs. Kong if Toho entirely pulls out and say, you no longer have the rights to not just Godzilla, but, say, Rodan, Mothra, and Ghidorah, and the rest of the kaiju. They're gonna have to maybe do reshoots, even though they said that the film's already in post-production.
Film's in post-production. I think for sure that after Pacific Rim, I think Legendary learned, all right, let's not leave things dangling. Let's just wrap it up and then work a new story after that. Because Pacific Rim left kind of a cliffhanger and a weird ending. And there's definitely not going to be a third Pacific Rim movie after the way the box office went. So they got the chance to do King of the Monsters and Godzilla vs. Kong back to back to do kind of like an Infinity War Endgame sort of thing. And I think that the smart thing to do, and these are smart filmmakers from everything we've seen so far, I think the smart thing would be to wrap everything up and that they wouldn't throw in the Mecha Ghidorah tease if that's not going to get brought up in the next film.
Like, there's another thing I'll bring up briefly a little bit later about the whole post-credit scene with Ghidorah's head, but there are a few other theories on what could happen, because I don't think it's going to be deliberately Mecha Ghidorah, but we do think that there'll be genetically alterations to maybe create another Ghidorah, like, say, Des Ghidorah, or just a regular Ghidorah, or some kind of mutation of Ghidorah that could lead to other
there's definitely
Toho
something.
kaiju.
The definite thing we can say, though, is that they're going to be making a Ghidorah that they can try to control.
I mean, it's also possible they could probably just reuse the technology of the, what's it called, the kaiju cells and everything, just to make like a Mecha Godzilla or something instead.
Well, that's the thing is, like, I don't think they're going to go too crazy with the mecha concept, but they might try to do cybernetically alterations. Who knows? We don't know yet. But let's talk about the film. I guess we'll go with Darkon first, since he is the guest of the show, his thoughts on the overall film.
So overall, I really like this film, especially when you compare it to the 2014 film, because when you really go back to it, it's an okay film, but it's kind of really bland in a lot of areas, not just because of the humanist aspect and all, even just the Godzilla aspect. It wasn't as grand as it could have been. I did see some people complaining about the film, like a legit complaint that both this and the first film has. Well, this film is a little better for this particular aspect compared to the first film. It still suffered from that. One thing that I agree that even when you compare it to even Kong Skull Island, because of the dark setting and the nighttime and everything and all that, sometimes it's really hard to see what's going on. Not saying that it's so impossible to see that you just can't see anything, but it's enough that it is kind of a nuisance that they always like film these in the nighttime. It's fine if we do some scenes in the nighttime, but all the big battles so far in both films have been nothing but nighttime darkness. So outside when you see like the beams of attacks and other things and the fire and all that, it's just a very dark movie. So it kind of is a little bit of a problem there. Other than that, I personally don't remember many of the human characters' names, even after this review portion here. Their actions were a lot better, so the human cast in general was a lot better, in my opinion, compared to the first film. Because when you really look back on the first film, they barely did anything. And outside, obviously, it'd have to be a live-action film. They obviously need to have some kind of human interaction element. They didn't seem to have any purpose, really, in the first film. Whilst this one, at least they went ahead and helped Godzilla and the others fight and everything and all that. And really the only one that was kind of important between the first and second film that is kind of a named character that you can remember is Dr. Survival. But other than that, everything's just kind of meh when it came to the human cast. This film in general, though, I still really liked. And while some people might say that it's like way too many monsters, not enough humans, I really don't see that a case here. Because of what happened with the first one in comparison, this is definitely a much better balance in my opinion. So overall, I think they've ended up becoming a much better film in the end.
You want to talk about anything specific that you enjoyed, like scene-wise, imagery?
That. I did really like how they implemented the whole transformation for Mothra. I think it looked very pretty in the way that they animated her, and because of that, especially when you look at some other movies, especially when it came to the time, you don't really see that kind of thing happening because obviously it's a lot more practical. This was definitely a lot more CG compared to practical, obviously, but it is still really nice what they did with the CG to make that transformation look really nice. And it is funny though, because thanks to Bandai kind of spoiling the monsters in general, we kind of already knew what was happening in this film, but they really should have held back that burning Godzilla though, because that's kind of one of the biggest problems in my opinion. I didn't actually remember that figure was even announced, so it didn't really affect me too much. But those who do remember that existed, I think that was kind of a dick move to kind of already show that it was going to happen in the film, because why else would they show a figure like that specifically based on this version of Godzilla?
I can agree with you that it ruined the execution of the actual end game, or should we say the end-all be-all, is exactly what you said, is that toy, unfortunately, I think, hurt people who had that, like, almost, I guess, Star Wars Last Jedi kind of expectation of theory of how it's going to be executed.
Yeah, but because we already knew it was going to happen, it kind of downplayed it a bit. If they just held that back until after the movie, I think it would have been a lot stronger. Because then, now people get a figure of what they saw, rather than, this exists. Okay, thanks for telling us. That kind of was the problem. But let's see. In terms of other effects, the one scene that we see in like almost every main trailer with the cross imagery of Ghidorah is still really cool, especially in practice with the movie itself. Obviously, it was a really cool scene in the trailers themselves. This movie obviously has a lot of religious allegories as a whole, but that's just kind of one of the major scenes that we've seen in like almost every trailer. So it was nice to actually see it in the film too. There was actually one thing that I forgot to say, especially when you look at the earlier trailers. I thought that scene where she was activating the orca, obviously we didn't see what the orca was during that scene in the trailers. I thought it was like, oh, she's just trying to find people that help. I'm stuck somewhere. They definitely held back that scene, and it's not exactly...
No, they actually recut it.
Ah.
They recut that scene, actually, where I think they took out the part of her locating people. She just went in with the orc and was just like, bam, that looks completely different than the execution.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that scene was interesting. Outside of all the trailer scenes, that's like one of the majorly changed scenes in my opinion. There might be some little scenes from there, but that particular scene I think was the major change between the different variations. So obviously what you see on film and what you see in the trailer. Oh, there's actually one more thing I'll say. It is cool that they made a ton of unique kaiju in this movie, but I think it would have been better if they had at least some more named ones. And maybe just use it down the line. Obviously, we already talked about that most likely they're not going to make like 50 movies or 10 movies and everything. They're not going to see this giant cinematic universe of legendary monsters. But because they've implemented so many monsters in this film, and like almost all of them are new names, obviously I think that's also another thing that could be a problem for those who might have watched a lot of the other Godzilla films. It's like, oh, this is someone you know, this is someone you know. But in reality, it's no, this is someone brand new. So there has some misconnection there. Like, you see what I mean, right?
Yeah.
You're saying it's a cock tease, which is actually a true thing, because we had the belief that there was either Baragon, Anguillus, or Varan. We had Kumonga, and that
Cock
did throw a lot
blocked
of
me with
people out.
Kumonga for a
Turns out it
second
wasn't
time.
Kumonga. That's just confusing.
This is the second spider monster to not be Kumonga.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of funny. There is one thing when you really think about this movie, it's actually pretty funny. This is like Jurassic Park now, but with kaiju. Because the end of Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, it's like, oh, the dinosaurs are out in the world now. Now it's like Fallen Kingdom, but now with kaiju. It's kind of funny.
Oh yeah, I made that reference earlier where I said to Mucha opening day, I felt like it was a mix of your Destroy All Monsters, your Final Wars, and your Jurassic Park, or your Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom on the aesthetic of what the monsters are doing. Whereas the story felt like a weird hybrid of your early Showa mixed in with your late Showa, mixed in with a little bit of, cocaine.
And Batman v Superman.
Yeah, a lot of people want to keep using that Batman v Superman. They really want to keep using that
There's a lot of similarities.
I only noticed like 3. There might be more, but I only saw like 3.
It's a lot of plot structure stuff, like let's insert new characters into a flashback from the previous movie. And then just like a lot of the teases and setup is like, oh, well, Zod's body, Ghidorah's head.
At least it isn't a bottle of piss.
Thank God there's nothing like that in this movie. The general nature of Mothra being so amazing and sort of out of left field like Wonder Woman was. That one's a little bit looser, but I kind of had the same feeling watching Mothra show up that I did when Wonder Woman showed up in Batman v Superman. So there's a few things like that I think about. Also religious symbolism up the ass.
Alright, so Darkon, were you finished?
Oh yeah, I think after that point that's pretty much all I'm saying.
Alright, sound out your take on the film.
So I've seen it twice, which is pretty awesome. And after seeing it twice, I realized that at the end of the day, regardless of what you think of the movie, it's undeniably a Godzilla film. The 2014 film kind of felt like it was lacking elements that made it a Godzilla movie. This kind of had the spirit, the feeling, the sounds, the excitement level, and kind of just like a more Japanese plot structure in a lot of ways, which may be why it's not connecting with American audiences as much. It's much more of a Godzilla film. It kind of felt like a Millennium era film. And that was kind of like, I thought was really nice because you have, your human cast to have a focal point for a driving narrative and a story, but they didn't overstay their welcome. And in fact, the story itself wouldn't happen without them. I think the story of 2014 Godzilla, of Godzilla fighting the Mutos, would have happened without any of the human characters. But in King of the Monsters, if you didn't have, the creation of the Orca, you didn't have the eco-terrorist group, anything like that, you wouldn't have had Ghidorah getting freed. Ghidorah was stuck in ice. Dude was going to probably stay there for a much longer time until the humans intervened to blow him out of the ice to start their plan. And because Ghidorah rose is why all the other monsters ended up gathering towards him as part of the Alpha Code. So, you had that aspect of it, and you also had the human characters in general, the USS Argo leading Rodan away from the Mexican village, like taking him and being like, let's take and guide him to a bigger target in the form of King Ghidorah. So it's like you get him away from the civilians, which I thought was smart because, later on Washington, D.C. gets flooded and Boston gets completely destroyed. But they were able to save that village, which hadn't been fully evacuated, because they were able to lead a monster away, which I think was a tactic that was really smart. And the writers were clever to not let them abuse that, because later on they mentioned that because of Ghidorah, the distractions weren't working against the monsters anymore. So I thought that was like some clever filmmaking writing. And I did like how Boston entirely evacuated before the monster attack, so that kind of like took the edge off of the final battle, because it was like, oh, it's kind of a final battle in empty city, so you don't have to like having your brain slip into the mode of, wow, how many people died from that tail swing? So I think I kind of enjoyed that fact about it, is that the final battle kind of just got to be itself, because it was just in an empty city. But of course, the human characters are the focal point, to keep things going. Overall, I think the monsters were very well realized. I think, they captured Mothra's beauty and grace. They captured Ghidorah's intimidating size, and just kind of like the way that his heads had different personalities in a way. And there was definitely like, a little bit of a power struggle. I love that they gave Ghidorah a rattlesnake motif, with his tongue just like flickering out, and the way his tail's rattled, and the way that when his head regenerated, it kind of looked like, snakeskin in a way, which I thought was a really cool like angle to put with the character. And I loved Rodan just being a giant fire demon bird that was just willing to switch sides at a drop of a hat, because he was going to follow whoever's in charge. He doesn't really care about his own ambitions at that point. He's just going to follow whoever's in charge, be it Ghidorah or Godzilla.
At least this time, Godzilla wasn't just a tired dick like it was in the first movie. It's like, I'm tired of this. Why do you keep attacking me?
Yeah, no, his rival showed up, and he's like, I gotta beat this bitch down. The three-headed dragon's taking my slot. I enjoyed the stuff with the Hollow Earth and Godzilla, like, sleeping inside of a destroyed city. I also was looking at it like, man, if only the MCU had Namor, we could get something this beautiful on a larger scale. But I think some of my favorite stuff, Easter egg-wise in this movie, is that we had protesters with the sign that said, destroy all monsters. Which I thought was really clever, especially with, some of the Destroy All Monsters illusions they had later.
I actually didn't catch that. Where did that
I caught that the second time. It was on the TV. There was like a protest, and someone's got this sign that says, Destroy All Monsters.
Oh,
and, like,
okay, I didn't catch that.
I seen it once, and I caught like so many Easter eggs, which is kind of funny. Everyone's like, how did you see them all? I've seen all of the Godzilla movies. No, seriously, how did you see them all? I saw all of them.
So many references in visuals, in plot elements, in music cues. Some of the stuff I really enjoyed, too, was Kong, because, like, I'm glad they didn't make this movie just the prelude to Kong, because that, I think, would have, lessened this movie. This movie got to be its own standalone movie while seeding Godzilla vs. Kong, especially in the end credits. But throughout the movie, they just talk about Skull Island like it's a place that exists, and they talk about Kong like he's just another one of the Titans. And I think that was really important, because sometimes when you're doing a connected universe, it's very easy to just get into name drop mode and be winking to the audience while you're like, look, it's Wonder Woman. But instead it's like, oh yeah, Godzilla, Muto, Kong, like it's just part of the list. He's just part of the world. It felt natural, and that was something that I was afraid wasn't going to feel natural, because we had Kong Skull Island, which took place decades prior to the 2014 film. And so that means, eventually they're going to have to start mentioning Kong at some point. And so I'm glad that it was very natural in its application.
Speaking of music cues, it was nice to actually hear the Godzilla theme this time. We missed that on the first one completely.
Oh yeah, like the fact we had not only the Godzilla theme, but also the Mothra theme. I think that was it was cool because it added to that feeling of this is a Godzilla movie. Not just like this is a Hollywood adaptation of Godzilla. Like, no, this is a Godzilla movie.
I wanted to say something before Darkon said about the music. I wanted to say, when you said about Kong, though, the other thing, though, is that you can't also forget with Kong, while he did happen decades earlier, he was a part of, the Monarch cover-up that, the doors blew wide open once Godzilla showed up. They were like, so you have, 21 of these, and there is one that isn't asleep, who's living on an island, you know what I'm saying? They were referring to Kong, as, they left him completely unchained. They just said, okay, Kong, this is your island. We're not going to bother you. We just wanted to come see what it was like. We wanted to see what was here, and we left. Whereas all the other Titans, they've captured them. They put, them in prisons.
But the other thing, too, to mention is that Monarch does have an outpost on Skull Island, because they showed the map, and it's like, oh, look, here's the Monarch outpost logo over empty water. which I thought was great. It's like even with their own mapping technology, they don't have a mapped Skull Island. They just have like, oh, hey, we have an outpost there, but we don't actually know what the shape of this thing is. So it kind of keeps that mystique about Skull Island alive.
I think
and
they also wanted to keep Kong more of a secret just because he was more docile. So they're like, if we just don't show that the island's there, they won't go for him.
Exactly. Like, don't tell anybody where Skull Island is, and nobody's going to try to find it. I think with, as you said, the Monarch cover-up and everything being blown open, it's the perfect writing, because when they wrote 2014 Godzilla, they didn't plan for Kong Skull Island to happen, I don't believe. So, they didn't have anything to reference, Monarch's first big monster find. But, now it's like, now you gotta have it, and it's like they're just owning it as part of the world. They're not trying to, nudge the audience and say, hey, we're making this a movie next time. It was like, nah, here's just, it's just part of this world. This is the same world. Here's some setup at the end of, Kong's like, hey, Godzilla, why are you calling yourself king? Because I'm older than you. But when he's not. But, it's all semantics, but...
I mean, by the Kong comics, Kong is not older than Godzilla. He was brought there somewhere in the 1920s or 1910s to that island.
Well, the thing is, like, he's also the baby of his family on Skull Island, so it's like Kong feels like he's stronger while Godzilla just hibernates a lot. Kong has been awake for a long time. I'm really excited for Godzilla vs. Kong, mostly for the Kong part, but, I'm looking forward to it. I think they did a lot of great job to set it up without explicitly making it a 2-part movie.
You got anything else? Nothing else?
I think that's about it.
Alright, this is my thing. Watching the film, knowing we had original Toho music, Akira Ikafube's Godzilla March, Godzilla's track, some of those, scores, as well as the Mothra song, which was not entirely composed by Ikafube, but by another person who actually did the lyrics and whatnot, who's more credited to in the actual film. Being a part of this movie was great. I do feel like Toho was either pretty passionate about them getting at least those 2 songs, whereas I think maybe Legendary thought they wouldn't be able to afford the other songs, because there are other Godzilla tracks, or should we say kaiju scores, that could have been used. Because with Rodan, there are a few music cues to his music that you see in the original 56 film, but they're not strong enough, even to, a diehard fan like myself. Like, I had to sit back and, re-listen to it a couple of times just to see some of the cues from the original 56 film, but there's not enough in there to be solidified to make it sound entirely like Rodan, but at least it fit the character of Rodan. Ghidorah's the same too. They went for an original music track. I also find it funny that some people may not notice this. The guy composing King of the Monsters is the guy who's currently composing the score for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now. On top of that, having that music there really helped going into this film. Just knowing it was there, having seen the trailers for it. Not the trailers, but I should say the Japanese side of it. They really, hinted at it. You get into the film, and they do a lot of stuff that is obviously set up like a Godzilla film. There's somewhat of a foreshadowing, there's somewhat setups, because it felt like a Millennium film, like Soundout said, with the whole, oh hey, look, we're flashing back to the first attack in San Francisco. Then we fast forward, and it's kind of like Godzilla against Mechagodzilla with the whole Yumio Shaku's incident where she, got put on desk duty and she's been pissed off at Godzilla. You have this thing where the dad's pissed off that his son's dead. It's ironically another thing where they stole a bit from Gamera, Guardian of the Universe trilogy. A lot of what Godzilla is, unfortunately, in the Legendary Monsterverse, he's more Gamera than he is Godzilla by being a very, I guess you would say, primordial creature and entity, but he still has a lot of Godzilla in him. In this case, he's a lot more docile, friendly towards humanity, friendly towards nature, and is able to do just a lot of the more Godzilla-esque stuff. He swims around, he just moves about. There's monitoring always occurring, especially with how Monarch is. They said he's never came as close as he's had in this film to their main base than any other time in his known existence, which was interesting. There's the fact that they were about to fire on him with masers, which they didn't use throughout the film at all. They just showed them and were on the screen it said maser for 1 frickin' second, and then they never actually used them. That was a cock tease. And I felt like there was a lot of cool moments that they tried to stride for that you needed in a Godzilla film. I like the fact that there was a lot of Hollywood aesthetics worked into the film, where how the human actors work. There's an actual firefight, there's people shooting at each other. There's the whole part of where they're using the ship to lure Rodan into Ghidorah. There's the whole part where they have to try to pick up the Osprey below them, and the doors just won't open. So Mark and a few of the scientists go to help out to see if they can fix it, because some of them are technical engineers as well as being, biologists. And it really had that feel of what you needed to incorporate American Hollywood with Toho's kaiju. And a lot of people say that it was unnecessary, it wasn't needed. But if you want your general American audience to connect with this film, you gotta have to have these humans doing a lot more in-universe stuff than just standing around and expositing what these creatures are doing, or how can we stop them, or how can we beat them. Especially at the end where they're trying to find their daughter before Godzilla goes crazy. Now, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. They did bend the rules and break the rules a little by having the characters go in and rescue their daughter, because they're like, oh, she's one of us, so we gotta protect our own. But at the same time, though, it's like she's just one casualty. And logically, in reality, they probably wouldn't have been so demanding of it, because we've seen that several times in other Godzilla films, where they've kind of let characters there to die, and then they eventually find a way out themselves. In this case, they were like, balls to the wall, we got to find our daughter. Sada, I know you're off mute, so you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the overall human narrative in general, I thought, was just really strong, because the thing is that it's a storyline that a lot of people could connect to, which is like trying to do something to avenge a loved one and trying to do something because you lost somebody. So that like sense of loss is there. And I think that while the actions were extreme on the case of Ellen, there's a lot of great reasoning behind what she did. She's just been so broken, and she just wanted to save the world.
Actually, just called Emma Allen.
Did I call her Ellen?
No, you called Emma Allen.
Alan.
Allen, who is, the leader of the terrorist, and Emma, who is the scientist.
Oh, God. Anyways, no, but the thing is that she essentially wanted to fix the world, which is a lofty ambition, but the fact of the matter is she wanted to be better, but she couldn't be. And so it's like, it's kind of a conflicted character where she did a lot of bad things and she definitely paid for it. But all of what she was doing was kind of logical in some regard. Like, you can kind of understand where she was coming from, which is different than a lot of other Godzilla characters.
No, but that wasn't what a lot of people were complaining about. They thought that it was that they were too actually in the, I guess you would say, foreground than the background of the fact where there's the whole, we're gonna bring Rodan to Ghidorah, we're gonna go rescue this Osprey, or we're actually on foot running between the kaiju's feet. I think that was the problem with certain Godzilla fans rather than the American audience. You needed that to get your audience invested in these characters, where for the typical Godzilla fans, it was that, intricate part where they're at the end, driving in the Humvee, trying to go, where would she be? And the guy in the backseat going, if I had you for parents, I'd run away from home too. It's like, I think the reason they don't like that style is because that's a lot associated with the 98 film. And that, yet again, is another trope of Hollywood, of being too deep in the action when you're not necessarily needed to be there,
Yeah, and it's a thing of, I think with any kaiju film, the human characters are what anchors the story, because if you have 2 hours of just kaiju fighting each other, it'll get stale. As good as it could be, it'll get stale. Because it's just, all right, these monsters are just fighting each other in a city. But when you have any human character in the middle of the battle, you add some stake, and so you add some tension to the sequence. Because otherwise it's like, okay, well, you're just following these two kaiju, and, it's going to take a very long time for either of them to fall, and then eventually one will win over the other. But when you have the human characters, which are tiny little ants compared to these things, trying to run around on the ground and find somebody, it always brings in the tension of, oh, is somebody going to get stepped on? Is someone going to get hit by a loose energy beam? So it adds to the tension of the sequence.
That's the thing, though, that I also stated was missing from Japanese elements, is that style. But that's their style versus our style, which is required. I think, like I said, even the American or the international Godzilla fans, they think it's unnecessary. And I think that's the problem, is that's how you disconnect your audience with the genre you're trying to introduce them to. Because in this film, we do have a lot of tropes. Like I said, there's a lot taken from Mothra, there's a lot taken from Gamera, because we have the whole environmental message of Dr. Emma Russell. We have the whole how Godzilla's this primordial thing of just bringing balance to the force, kind of like the whole thing of he's the alpha, he'll regulate how things work kind of scenario, which Gamera also did in his series. So that's the parallels you have there. You have Ghidorah, who is the super parallel of his original Showa counterpart, hold the communism and alien mind control. But you take the show apart and you take the one scene in Rebirth of Mothra, and that's him. Rodan, on the other hand, he's like late Showa era Rodan, where he's just off, you bobbing up his head going, oh, shucks, what's going on, Godzilla? Where's Anguirus? What are we doing today, boss? Like, he's just like, butt monkey, which is, kind of what Rodan's role was, unfortunately, in the Showa era after his first 3 initial films. But there were a lot of good Easter eggs, there were a lot of good tropes to make this a good 65th anniversary film. I mean, like, you had Serizawa sacrificing himself to save the one thing he believed could save humanity, which was Godzilla. Then you have stuff like Ghidorah being an actual alien, Mothra doing the referencing thing to burning Godzilla, with Rodan dying in Mechagodzilla 2, as well as sacrificing giant monsters all-out attack to save Ghidorah, but in this case, she was now saving Godzilla. So I think they did a lot of amazing callbacks that are not just story nods or plot devices, but actual elements that we saw within the fights themselves, especially like how Godzilla used his pulse that is only known for being a Heisei ability. No other Godzilla had that except Heisei Godzilla, as well as the burning forms. So I think they incorporated so many things in there that if you go and watch like almost all of the Godzilla films, there's something in there for everyone, as well as every genre. I think it reflects more to the late Showa and the Millennium era more though, but it still holds its own, and I think it would be in all like 30 films, it would be somewhere in people's top 20. I don't think it would be below 20, but that's just me as a Godzilla fan. Oh yeah, one thing though that I want to bring up that you guys might find slightly interesting is the director himself and one of the writers stated if they had a chance to redo this movie, they wanted to actually incorporate, instead of that weird spider thing that brings back plant life, they actually wanted it to be Biolante, and they actually wanted Monster Zero to be Gigan, who is actually like a herald to summon Ghidorah, they stated in some interview.
Oh, that's cool.
So, I mean, that's one thing. Other than that, though, I think that there's nothing else more I can really say about this film, but that it touches on, just like I said, almost everything you could be possibly looking for in a Godzilla film. And I think that's why a lot of the hardcore ones that are early Showa and Shin Godzilla fanboys a little miffed about the film, is because it's not this huge character escapade about some crazy story about how are we gonna, pull a miracle out of our ass and then execute it. It's a case where it's late Showa and it's like, well, we kind of got to bring the kaiju together and let them fight, as Serizawa would say. So overall, I'd say go check it out. I don't think you necessarily need to see the 2014 movie to get a full context.
Oh, no, I think you're totally fine skipping that.
Yeah, you're fine. You can actually skip that. If you want more context, go right ahead, watch it. But I mean, I don't think it is entirely necessary. Does anyone have any last words they want to add to the film so we can start maybe wrapping it up? Because I gotta say, we can all agree that we recommend people go checking it out. And most likely you will at least enjoy it and like it. You might not entirely love it, but you'll find something good about it.
I wanted to thank the filmmakers involved with putting in the tribute at the end of the credits to the Godzilla actors. I thought that was honestly surprising, but it was so heartfelt, and I honestly shed a tear in the theater seeing it. So I just wanted to generally say that was one of the coolest things to happen in a movie. It was unexpected and it was so perfect.
I'm just thankful this movie actually had more monster fights and not just behind the door, on the TV. There was a little bit of that, but nowhere near as bad as the 2014 one. My gosh.
Yeah, alright, so then, since we all are in unison, like I said, final words are, just go watch it again. I'm just gonna reiterate that. Nevertheless, we can conclude our episode now, since it was just one giant fan wank to it. We'll probably talk more about Godzilla in the next coming weeks or so, not just this movie, but, the franchise as a whole, since we all seem very, Godzilla-like, or should we say Godzilla fad right now. So, to wrap up, Darkon, at least tell people what you do or how they can locate you if they want to follow you on social media, please.
Those who are interested, you could follow me on Twitter under Darkon633. Also, you could check me out at the Hero Club as I work on articles and all that, and sometimes on YouTube, very rarely, but I've been kind of coming back. Also, Darkon633.
All right, Soundout, your jab and plugs.
Soundout 12 on YouTube for toy reviews and more. Also, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Soundout 12. It's where you can find me. You can send me messages. You can complain about my shrill voice when I start complaining about things, which didn't happen this episode because I friggin' love this movie.
Alright, and I'm Wheelchair21. I was technically your hardcore and your radical. I wanted to say a lot more, but, we have that time constraint of trying to stick to at least an hour minimum or maximum. We have that weird averaged out. But you can find me on practically Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, Wheelz21. Instagram is Todjaw_Doyle. And if you wanted us to be more in-depth, we apologize for that, because we just kind of wanted to just rush this out as soon as possible, telling you how much we love the film and enjoy it. And we'll probably go more in-depth when we get the home video release and point out several Easter eggs. Hell, we might do an entire episode on this film once the home video release is out. Well, that's nothing but Easter eggs or our believed hunches and theories on references to other Godzilla films, kaiju films, and whatnot. And we'll see you all, hopefully, next week with episode 87.
Hey, it's Wheelchair21, and thanks again for listening to an all-new episode of Los Ingobernables de Tokusatsu. If you want to hear more content or see more content from the Hero Club YouTube channel, we're going to need you to subscribe, like, comment with some feedback, and share this channel with a friend. We also would like you to check out our website, hero-club.com, and follow us on various social media outlets just by looking up Hero Club for Life, as well as the stores you see are where we shop. Anyways, thanks again, and we'll see you all next time.